Welcome to the Explainer. We're surrounded by this hidden language. It's a language of design that's constantly telling us whether a space feels safe or, kind of unsafe. I mean, think about it, right? Why is it that some parks just feel welcoming, while others, even if they're totally empty, just feel menacing? It makes you want to walk just a little bit faster. And the answer? It's usually not about guards or cameras. Nope. It's something way more subtle, something that's literally baked right into the design of the place.
Okay, so this secret language of security, it actually has a name. It's something that architects and security pros talk about all the time. It's called CPTED.
So CPTAD, and you pronounce it CPTED, it's built on this really simple but honestly powerful idea that you can actually use design to influence how people behave. We're not talking about preventing crime with brute force. We're talking about doing it with smart, thoughtful architecture and even just landscaping. All right, so think about your typical security stuff. The locks, the cameras, the guards. We call that hard security. CPTED, it's completely different. It's psychological. The whole goal is to design a space where a potential bad guy feels totally exposed and uncomfortable, while you, the person who's supposed to be there, you feel safe and you feel in control. And what's really amazing is just how efficient this whole approach is. I mean, if you bake these CPTD principles into a project right from the get-go, during the architectural design phase, it's often the single most cost-effective security measure you can possibly have in the long run. It's all about being proactive, not reactive. So how does this all work in the real world? Well, it pretty much boils down to three core strategies. Think of them like plays from a playbook that designers use to shape how we act in a space. Let's dive in and break them down. Okay, play number one. It's called natural surveillance. And the whole idea is super simple. See and be seen. It's all based on this one fundamental truth about crime. Criminals really, really don't want an audience. And you make this happen with some really simple but super effective choices. We're not talking about installing a bunch of extra cameras. We're talking about placing windows so they naturally overlook sidewalks and parking lots. It's about using open-style fencing like chain link or wrought iron instead of a solid wall. It's even about things like trimming hedges so they're no taller than 3 feet and trimming up tree canopies so there's a clear 7 feet underneath. See? It's all about putting more eyes on the street, naturally. All right, on to our second play, natural access control. And again, this isn't about building giant walls or fences. It's way more subtle. It's about using the environment to kind of guide the flow of people, making it really obvious where you're supposed to go and where you're not. The whole point here is to create a sense of risk for anyone who's up to no good. Think about it. A clearly marked pathway just naturally guides you. Or what about planting some thorny bushes like holly or barberry right under a ground floor window? That's a pretty good natural deterrent, right? You can even use something as simple as a flower bed to create this subtle psychological line that says, hey, this is the public sidewalk and that's a private yard. And that brings us to our third and final core play, territorial reinforcement. This one is all about using design to send a super clear message. And that message is, someone owns this space and they clearly care about it. These little physical cues, they create this really powerful sense of ownership. When you're walking on a public concrete sidewalk and it suddenly switches to, say, brick pavers for someone's private walkway? That's a signal. You instantly know you're crossing into a different zone. Things like signs, fences, even just a really well-maintained garden, they make the people who belong there feel more protective, and they make intruders feel like they are very obviously trespassing. But here's the thing. These principles aren't something you can just set up and forget about. Nope, they take ongoing effort. And that leads us perfectly into a really related and pretty famous concept, the broken windows theory. The whole idea behind it is that visible signs of neglect, like, you guessed it, a single broken window that's just left there, it sends out a signal. It says, nobody cares here, no one is in charge. And that can kick off this downward spiral, It invites a little vandalism, then maybe some graffiti, and pretty soon you're looking at more serious problems. And this is the really crucial takeaway. Maintenance is security. It's an active security measure. When a city comes in and quickly paints over graffiti or replaces a burnt-out light bulb on a street or just keeps the park landscaping looking tidy, they're not just making things pretty. They are actively reinforcing that sense of order, that sense of ownership, and that is a huge part of preventing crime. Okay, so now that we know the basic principles, how can you actually start using this stuff? Well, there's a really simple tool that security pros use. It's called the 3D approach, and it's something you can use to, well, to read any space you find yourself in. First up is D for designation. You just ask, what is the designated purpose of this space? What is it supposed to be for? Is it for walking? Is it for sitting? Is it for parking your car? You've got to start with its intended function. That's step one. The second D is definition. So how is the space defined? How does the design communicate its purpose and its boundaries? Are the borders clear? Can you easily tell where the public area ends and a private one begins? A space that's well defined doesn't leave you guessing. And that brings us to the third and maybe the most important D, design. Does the physical design actually support the intended function? Here's a perfect example. Let's say the designation of a park bench is for a family to sit and rest, but the design places that bench in a dark, hidden corner where no one can see it. Well, that's a failure. The design completely contradicts the purpose, and what's worse, it creates a perfect spot for misuse. So to really nail this down, let's look at the whole CPTED philosophy by comparing it side by side with that hard security approach we talked about earlier. Yeah, this table really makes the difference crystal clear, doesn't it? Look at the approach. CPTED is psychological and environmental, while target hardening is all physical and mechanical. The goal? CPTED is about deterring crime through design. Target hardening is about denying access with force. So the examples for CPTED are things like landscaping and lighting. For target hardening, deadbolts and barbed wire. And the aesthetic, the feel of the place is totally different. CPTED feels welcoming, it feels soft. Target hardening, it can feel like a fortress. And this kind of thinking gets really detailed. I mean, it goes right down to the changing of the seasons. This is a great little tip. Think about a nice, thick hedge. It might be a perfect visual barrier in the summer, right? But what happens in the winter when all those leaves fall off? Poof, that barrier is suddenly gone. Good CPTED means you always have to design for the worst season, for the worst case scenario. So now you know the secret. Now you can read this language. The next time you're walking down your own street, or through a park, or even just into your office building, stop and look around. What is the design of that space really saying about its safety?